This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. And mate, we are back into competition mode. Super Rugby starts this week. Erc's back on. Top 14's back on. Major League Rugby starts, and we'll get to them all soon enough. But another exciting week ahead of us.
Alder Brett, I am in the Centurion Lounge in Heathrow. I thought that I saw my friend and overlapping Gerard Butler, but in fact it was Lee Mack. And so they have an
shameless name dropper.
Uncanny resemblance. I'm in a very quiet room. I'm making a noise in it. I'm on my way to Munster to help our friend Pat McCarry. He's got a play that commemorates the 5th anniversary of Soldier Field, that famous win that probably put Ireland into a trajectory we see now. But also it's a sad commemoration of the life of Axel Foley. His sister will be there, and we're raising funds to research sudden cardiac arrest. And the good people of Munster will gather around the lime tree in Limerick. So any words of wisdom? I know you were the Tin Man with a scarecrow. I forget which one you were. But what should I do for my thespian premiere?
After we stop recording, I'll give you a piece of advice that anyone who's worked in broadcasting has been given at some point in time, and it stays with you forever. So remind me afterwards. I'll give it to you, but that's
perfect.
It's not quite so PG for this time slot. We've got a great rugby chat with renowned columnist and author Geoff Parkes coming up in just a few moments, but we will start like we do always with cheers and jeers, and there's a twist in cheers and jeers this year in that we leave it up to the jeerer to decide whether it's jeers or perhaps double cheers. And I'm leading off with cheers, and it's a cheers to England centre Ollie Lawrence, who on a second look back at their win over France, their fantastic win over France, so many of the good things that England did in that game had the number 13's fingerprints in it. He was so good. We touched on Elliot Daly's superb line for that last try in the weekend post-mortem, but Lawrence was just outstanding throughout, and he ensured that Lions match day 23 selections are going to change every week through the Six Nations, as they have already through 2 rounds.
Yeah, and he made it very much a like-for-like case that if Bundy Aki is not it's him, and it doesn't really mean that much of a difference. It's a line bashing, rock setting number 12, which every team likes to have.
Yeah. Yes, I said number 13. Sorry, my apologies there. He has played 13 actually. Just so good, so good. What have you got? What have you got for me?
My cheer is the strange roller coaster of emotions that I was experiencing. As anyone who grew up knowing that England was the one team that you never wanted to lose to. For South Africans, it's basically the All Blacks are the rival. You know, we lose to them more than we win, and we don't love losing, but we accept losing as part of life's story.
Yep.
But any loss to England is unacceptable. We didn't really used to lose to Ireland, so that's a new rivalry. And the French are just sort of annoying, but the English were hated. And I found myself not only cheering for England, but chanting Slide Holmes' name and enjoying spelling it. Extolling the virtues of Freeman online. And then I realized that final play, which was set up beautifully by a maul that just, it had enough menace to it that the French kept having to pay attention to it. It sucked enough of them in. The final instance, even Dupont was going towards the maul, and then it flipped. And I was out of my chair screaming. So I'm jeering myself for the dirty, perverse feeling that I have. I was being caught coming out of a peep show or something. It's weird. What happened to me?
For how long did you shower and scrub yourself afterwards?
Beautiful move. And if you want to see execution under pressure, just play that whole thing from Jamie George's throw to Ollie to Jamie.
Yeah.
The exact time Alex peels off, it's just a beauty.
The end on view of that play is superb. You see so much. So go and check that out. A quick message before we get into this week's ep. If you are listening to the 8-9 Combo via Spotify, via Apple Pods, or any of the podcast platforms, just very quickly go and hit the subscribe button, the following button right now. And if you're watching on YouTube, then just hit the red subscribe button just down there in the corner. just like African Wild Dog and Tilman van Delft have in the last week or so. You won't miss an episode, and the numbers climbing keeps us having great rugby chats
Hey,
each week.
Van Delft is a doctor in Edinburgh. He's a Safa, obviously by his name, and he's from Grey College in Bloemfontein.
There
Tillman,
you
what's
go.
up?
There's an extra incentive for you. Harry will chase you down and share your life story as well. Let's get straight into it then, mate. Our some Six Nations fallout, some Warren Gatland fallout, and something of a preview as well for Super Rugby 2025 with Geoff Parkes. It's wonderful to welcome back for the first time in 2025 one of the best rugby writers we know, but not just in the sense of his weekly rap columns on the Raw, but he's also responsible for A Year in the Life and Death of the Melbourne Rebels, a great book of their fantastic behind the scenes look at their 2024 demise of the Rebels, but also now his debut novel, When the Deep Dark Bush Swallows You Whole. Please welcome back friend of the pod and its host, Geoff Parkes. Hello, mate. Welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you, and thanks for having me back. And just for the record, since the weekend, I have had a dozen scalding hot showers, and I've gone through 2 scrubbing brushes because I was cheering for England as well, and I've just got no idea how that happened.
It is weird, isn't it? And Geoff, it's funny because installing Maro Itoje as captain, I kind of thought I might go the other way. Jamie George is a very likable guy, but I think I like this new cohort of Northampton Saints. I like the attack. I think it looks interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've I think had a tendency over the years down in this part of the world to heap scorn on England and that old sort of stereotype about them kicking the leather out of the ball and that's just not what this side's about. They're not the Harlem Globetrotters, but they're playing a good brand of rugby. They're trying things. I wasn't convinced about Marcus Smith going back to fullback, but it's interesting.
He was very good back there, wasn't he?
Yeah, look, there was a few errors, but now they've got 2 playmakers. They got the Bundy Key lookalike Lawrence, who you mentioned in the midfield. I thought it was just they got skill on the wings, and then they've got a gutsy loose forward trio. Probably one of the best defensive sets in the game. So they were well in that game. I think France probably helped them. They dropped a lot of ball. Sort of reminded me a bit of some of the All Black sides in the professional era that want to win, playing like rock stars. And I think in the analysis afterwards, I think France will realise they just didn't make the hard yards. And it's Test rugby. You have to respect Test rugby and do the right things. So, so because they didn't commit the English pack, they didn't get flattened like they did against Ireland and ran out of puff in the second half. And then that showed when they were able to come back after being headed and score that try at the end. So great result for rugby. Really interesting. Really sets up the Ireland-France game. And it's Six Nations always delivers, no exception.
Yeah, to your point on the game itself and how it appealed to rugby across the world, in France itself, on France 2, which carried it live, there were, I think it was 9.3 million at its peak, and an average viewership of 8.5 million, and that represented a 45% stake of available viewers in a loss. Which shows you the extreme interest. It was the highest since the quarterfinal in the World Cup. What do you think about the French ability to raise interest, both at club level and also at Test level right now? They seem to be just voracious for more rugby.
Yeah, the game's very strong there, isn't it? And I mean, you say that's a record crowd watching for a loss. I guess they didn't know that when they started watching.
No.
and then, you know, in the 79th minute, they probably felt like they were, you know, being rewarded for watching anyway. So, yeah,
maybe the follow-up question is how early did the 9.3 million tune out?
Yeah, well, you know, maybe in the 80th minute, I think a lot of them would have dropped out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Not hanging around for the, you know, renditions of Swing Low or anything like that. So, look, even though France lost, those people know they've got a great side to support. They get good value. Everyone wants to watch. You know, you won't believe this, Harry, but everyone wants to watch the French number 9 because he is the greatest player ever to have played the game. And you know, and look, he is a great player. Let's not be too flippant. But he's very popular, right? He's, you know, one thing we don't do very well in this part of the world is develop star factor and, you know, around our players, and that's something that they've done in France. So good luck to them for doing that.
No, you make a good point. And just post Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes' application to be considered the GOAT having been denied in favor of Tom Brady, and still, it shows you that you want to wait for a career to develop. And Antoine Dupont has plenty of career left. And within that next 30, 40, 50 tests is where the story will be told. I've been reading the French papers, L'Equipe, Midi Olympique, about their wash up. And actually, the French love negative review, by the way. They are terrible at the players.
Yeah.
But their point...
We reckon we've all seen some bad reviews after games. The French ones are terrible. They are.
Yeah, their ratings are low. But there was a I guess, a rugby doctrine I was interested in. They were saying about Dupont, not criticizing the player, but criticizing the coaches and a game plan that revolves too much around him, and found that the English closed the avenues around him and made him too much of a thinker, too many decisions, and then run out of puff. And they pointed out the average, he's averaging 73 minutes a game. And I don't care how great you are, you're not going to be as fresh as another guy, Cam Roygaard, with 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Not when you're average starting scrum half around the world at test level, at provincial level, at franchise level, at any professional level, is playing about 50,
55,
averaging 73 that's long.
So it's interesting. I think maybe they're looking at that. From the other games of Six Nations, what did you take from Ireland, Scotland? Poor Scotland just cannot seem to find the magic.
No, and I think, you know, a lot of that's more around Ireland. I think when we saw them in the end of last year on what we call a spring tour, what they call the autumn internationals, I had a sort of half a sense that Ireland had finally come over the top, and they're in that sort of no man's land of having to think about a rebuild or sort of trying to hang on to the Peter O'Mahony's of the world and all of that. So it was really refreshing, especially for Irish supporters, to see them come out in these first couple of games and really deliver. You know, play with pace and a real sense of authority, and so those guys are well in this Six Nations. Really, it'll come down now to the one game against France. It'll be an absolute cracker. And so I think it says more about their readiness and how well they're going, you know, and maybe less about Scotland, although it is a reminder, I guess, that there is a class gap there. And I think a lot of that's to do with the depth. It's not necessarily the 1 to 15, but it's the 15 to 35 sort of thing where Ireland's got that, you know, they've just got a better set of replacements. And we're seeing that now at 10. You know, they've got a choice of new 10s after all those years with Johnny Sexton. And I'd say Prendergast looks like he's stepping in pretty seamlessly. And
to the point that there's almost Australian-like parochial debates about who should play 10. Oh, you're only saying that because you go for Leinster. You know, there's a real demarcation as to who should start, shouldn't start. You know, all of that. It's actually been quite funny to watch from a distance because we recognise it so well down our part of the world.
Yeah, no, it has, but it speaks to the depth, right? So they've got young guys coming through, and there's arguments about which one do we use? And you look at hooker, they've got two hookers that either of those guys would start for most nations, and it's right through their whole 15 and whole 23 and deeper. So fair play to Ireland.
It's interesting as well because I think in the autumn, we wondered about a lack of refreshment. Maybe they were too easy to prepare for. The All Blacks did unlock them. I think there's a difference in 2025, and it's on attack shape. Brett loves attack lines and shape. Is they're doing a 4-man pod. The lead runner is directly in the middle and is on both shoulders, and then someone right behind him, and everyone else is running threes. Sometimes Ireland even goes to fives, and the attack is coming through the middle of the field, and so you cannot sit on Mac and James Lowe. You've got to come in. I find that to be interesting and wonder if who that's coming from. Is it Paul O'Connell? Is it from Easterby? Like who's originating that? But it felt like to me that was the one wrinkle that is making them more dangerous, and it would have been interesting to see them do that against the All Blacks.
Yeah, for sure.
Love to be a fly on the wall when Paul O'Connell's suggesting running lines, like attacking shapes.
Well, and I almost suspect a lot of that's come from the players as well. So a guy like James Lowe, they've obviously given him license. He's going to use it, right? And he'll just wander in and if he sees a hole, give me the ball, And look, we see that here as well. We mentioned Hansen. We see the Brumbies of all the Super Rugby sides here. That's something that the Brumbies look to do: expose defences around the ruck with a switch or a winger or a fullback coming in close to the ruck. So, that's what that reminds me of. It's a little bit Brumbies-like. They can argue about whose idea it was first, but it is good to see Ireland, playing with that little bit of looseness. There's still a lot of structure there, but giving those guys, the license to try stuff, and it's good to see.
I was trying to think of one Irish player that couldn't handle the attack and couldn't initiate, and I'm coming up empty. Every one of Andrew Porter can handle. Ty Byrne can initiate attack. It does remind me of the All Blacks of old.
Yeah, it does. You might have to fire the questions, Harry. We may have lost our host for a minute.
Brett's gone. Yeah, I don't know if we record locally, so this is all getting picked up. I just don't know where he went. Let me see if he has a message. Ew. No, I see nothing. Well, I'll keep firing then. All right, so your mate, Warren Gatland, who you played cricket with at some point in time, is on the way out. Mutual consent, which obviously saves some money and is a testament to Warren Gatland not squeezing out every last penny. What do you think in the end was the real reason why Wales decided to move forward and why Warren himself also decided to move on?
Well, let me set the record straight on the cricket side of it for a start. So I did play against Warren Gatland.
Oh, okay.
But there's more to the story. I was playing with, at the time, Ian Foster. So Ian Foster and I were in the same team, and Gatland was in the opposition. But, that is many years ago, Harry, I must admit. Gats did remember it, though. I sat next to him at a dinner last year, and unless he was being particularly kind, but he did seem to remember the day. So
he doesn't strike me as much of a bowler. Was he a batsman?
No, he was a batsman, middle order batsman, and a pretty classy batsman too. Yeah. Ian Foster was an opening bat. He and I were opening the batting for a regional side called Midlands, which is sort of the equivalent of King Country Rugby and South Waikato Rugby combined. So, but like I said, many years ago. Look, the thing about Gatland is, I think if we look at him as a man and his history, he's a dedicated Waikato guy. He's got two homes. His heart's in two places, and one of those is Waikato, and the other one is Wales. And so this will be hurting him. But he went back there because he felt that Wales needed him. They felt he was the guy to help. It hasn't worked out. So he would have been saying all along, look, you just let me know when you need, to put an end to this, because I want the best outcome for Wales. This isn't embarrassing for him or a stain on his career. Wales have got enormous problems that go long way beyond who the coach is. So he's not one of these gun for hire coaches that, right, where's my next job or anything like that. His heart's in Waikato and his heart's in Wales. So whether he coaches again remains to be seen. But, I don't think emotionally, I think, he'll still want to see Wales recover from this, and how soon he'll be ready to stick his neck out again somewhere else. In this sort of, in that depth and with that sort of commitment to whoever the team is, that remains to be seen.
Will we ever see a coach stay that long? I mean, I saw an amazing statistic, which is that 1/5 of all Welsh tests in their history were played under Warren Gatland. Is that ever going to happen again? It seems improbable.
It's an incredible statistic. I guess it's a reflection, obviously, of playing 14, 15 tests a year instead of.
But still,
instead of
still
in
the 140-year history of Welsh rugby, it's incredible thing. That's going to be the interesting thing to me, whether he does coach again, because he came back to the Chiefs and back to the Waikato because that was what he felt was the right move to make. And then he goes, and like that was the home calling, if you like. And then he went back to Wales because that was another homecoming, if you like.
Correct.
And neither of those two moves went particularly well, I would say. I think, it kind of suited the Chiefs that he went back to Wales. So like I just wonder now, like what's he got left to achieve?
Yeah, and again, speaking to him last year, he's got a place on the beach in New Zealand. He's comfortable. He loves rugby. He loves being around that environment, which is pretty typical for everyone when they're in it. But he doesn't need it, right? So I'm sure he'll take time to take stock and say, do I want to go around again, or is there another type of role for me back in New Zealand, and that doesn't involve head coaching and everything that goes with that. So, I'm sure he'll talk to a lot of people. He'll consider it all, but he doesn't need it. And all of the criticism and people pointing to the recent record, that won't matter at all to him. He's in there believing he's doing the right thing. He's got great faith in this next generation of players, and if Wales can hold that together, it is cyclical, and they're not going to be as low as this, forever. It will turn. How big the turn is, remains to be seen, because they don't have the player depth that some of the other nations do. But look, this is all, it's all due to a lot of things. But if we go back to the start of professionalism, what's happened in that 30 years, there's two countries that have handled professionalism worse than everybody else, and one's Australia and one's Wales. And and in terms of the structural changes that were made in Wales, I think both countries lost connection to the grassroots of the game, and they both Wales got it right for a while there with their coaching pathways and their talent identification, and that we saw that reflected in their results in Gatland's first spell. But since then, that's gone awry, and in Australia we definitely saw a lack of attention and investment put into coaching and coaching pathways, and then that fed through into the development of young players. And so we saw so many players coming through into Super Rugby and Test Rugby that weren't ready. So, that's sort of being addressed now, but, it's taken a long time. So Australia's probably a bit ahead of Wales now in that respect. But if we compare them to everybody else, they are still the two basket cases of the first tier nations.
Speaking of Australia, Super Rugby around the corner. You wrote a great piece for the Roar where you kind of wrapped the 6 most likely candidates for playoff spots. Sometimes we write an article. I think all 3 of us know about this. You write an article, and 1 week later, you kind of want to change your mind. Have you revised
the secret there,
anything?
though, is to wait 3 weeks, and then you can say, a month ago, this is what I said. Now I think this.
Any revisions?
Well, there hasn't been a ball kicked in anger yet, so I'm not quite ready to
Everyone's
backtrack.
Unbeaten.
Come on Monday, I might be backtracking. But no, look, I'm definitely not backtracking on the Blues for top spot. And I spoke about Vern Cotter and, that look on his face when they won the final last year. And everybody was going off their nut celebrating because that's what they do. And you could see behind Vern's sort of facade, he's thinking, right, what am I doing on Monday to make us better next year?
Yes. And it was very much a look of, all right, we'll have Monday off, but Tuesday we're getting serious again.
Yeah, exactly right. So I didn't think that, bode well for everybody else. And their side certainly hasn't got any weaker, apart from the fact that they've lost Sam Dowry for the year. And that's a bit of a sad story for them. So no, I expect they'll rush through. Look, I think the biggest issue in Super Rugby, if we're talking about changing our positions, was that the first round teams were released today. And I can't say I was thrilled to hear talk of players being rested and being put on rotation. It's round 1 of a 14-match competition, and we're getting players rested already. We really don't help ourselves in this part of the world, don't we?
It's really interesting. So the Australian, particularly the Wallabies contingent, have definitely been told that they will not play more than 7 games in a row, and most teams have got a bye into about round 8 or 9, give or take. But you look at the team that Brumbies named, and Valentini's got a bit of an injury situation at the moment, but there's no Wright, there's no Ikitau in that. They've
Alan
Alatoa's out of there as well. They've decided to very clearly manage the guys that they can rest the stars, manage the stars this
Brett,
week.
You can say tank if you want to say tank. You can say it, mate.
Well, it's interesting in that they play the Drua again in about round 4 back in Canberra. I don't think the Brumbies fancy going to Fiji on the 2nd week of February, knowing it's going to be as hot as it is in Canberra at the moment, which is warm enough, but we just cannot replicate 85% humidity here. That's just something you cannot be ready for.
Yeah.
And with a road trip to come to the Blues and Chiefs in successive weeks and only 6-day turnaround between them, they're very much looking strategically ahead to those couple of games in a couple of weeks' time.
How much do you think they storyboard that, Geoff? You've been in amongst the club and seen it up close. Are people planning 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out? Jake White just told us that he banks on 1.5 players being injured per match, and has to plan around that. So is that what we're doing now, or is it coming from the Wallabies?
Well, a little bit of both. I think Brett's right in the sense that those managed loads are a real thing, and we've seen New Zealand do that pretty consistently in recent years. But it is up to each franchise to manage it how they want. So Brett used the word strategic. That's exactly right. They do storyboard it, Harry, and a person who's got a big role in this when they're going to Fiji and everything that's associated with that around the heat and humidity is the strength and conditioning manager, so he will be right in the middle of this, and he'll have a heavy influence in Stephen Larkham's thinking about how they're going to handle this. So, look, there's a chance they go there. It's first game of the year. If they sneak a win, they'll be beside themselves. But if they don't, well, it's not the end of the world. And as Brett mentioned, very tough couple of weeks coming up. And, you don't want guys flattened coming back from Fiji. And when you talk to the players about how difficult it is physically in that heat, the longer time it takes to recover, you're really not setting yourself. Next weekend comes around really, really quickly. They won't be able to train fully on the Tuesday. So it's a compromised week, and they're only in the second week of the competition. So I can see why the Brumbies are doing it, but gee, it just doesn't look very good, and the fans don't really understand that in a 14-week competition, they're resting guys or saving guys in round one. It just doesn't feel right.
It's going to be it's going to be really interesting to see how the Australian teams do it, because Queensland have got the bye this week, New South Wales got the bye the following week. So Dan McKellar's gone full noise in round one. He's named everyone's there. Yeah, every big name the Waratahs have picked up over the off season, they are playing on Friday night against the Highlanders. But then there's a gap, a fair chunk of gap from then round two in Queensland case, round three for the Waratahs to their next bye. So there's going to have to be some very careful manipulating of things along the, and there'll be games coming up in a month's time where suddenly you will see Tupou sit out and Jake Gordon will sit out and Joseph Suaalii will sit it out, and likewise for Queensland, suddenly they'll sit McBride and Harry Wilson out for a week, and they're going to have to, because they've all got, and the Brumbies in the same boat. I mean, even the Force now have got 8 or 9 Wallabies there. Yeah. They're all going to have to be careful about how they do it, how many they can do it in 1 week. Is there a particular game where they can do 6 or 7 maybe? It's going to be interesting to see how it does go. And, of course, this is something that's only impacting the 4 Australian teams this year with the Lions here. The New Zealand will sit back and go, okay, rest of you.
And that's a good point. And to Harry's point about, the storyboarding and the planning, what's essential for these teams, and particularly for the Waratahs, they do have to pick and choose their targets. And so, for all of the Australian teams, and not disparaging the Highlanders here, but if they don't beat the Highlanders, then, they're not really going to be finals contenders, because they're not going to be expecting to go to Auckland and win. They might go to Hamilton and Wellington to win, but they're not better than even chances of doing that. So really, a match against the Highlanders, that has to be a must-win match. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen or it's going to happen easily. The Highlanders, they're not a poor side or anything like that. But in terms of targeting games, must-win games, Dan McKellar would have looked at that and thought, right, we're all in on this.
Yeah, no question about that.
Seems like there's 3 teams that we wonder about who's the second best team in New Zealand. There's 3 teams that are candidates, and then in Australia, there's 3 teams of who's the best one in Australia. What do you reckon in the Hunger Games in Australia and New Zealand?
Can I touch in on that? Is there 3 teams in New Zealand?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's 1, and then there's 2. I'm not sure about
the Chiefs. Crusaders. I think it's the Chiefs, Hurricanes in that order, and then I think there's a bit of a gap back to the Crusaders now. They've the names they've lost this year and what they've been able to fill in behind. I'm not sure the Crusaders are going to be a whole lot better than last year.
I think
and I can't believe I'm saying that.
I think they're looking similar to last year. I think their best 15 or best 23 is good enough for the comp, but they're already running into injury issues again, like last year. When we've got the All Blacks and the Wallabies on pretty quick turnaround, so all of those guys aren't ready and firing in round 1. So and they've got a tough start to the year as well. So
Yeah.
And the thing in New Zealand is if they don't start well, we're going to get all the rubbish about
why are we
the
bothering with
coaching.
Super Rugby? It's a crap competition. Why don't we just
Oh,
go
well,
ourselves?
It's more about Rob Penny, So last year there was a bit of blood in the water, and we had non-rugby reporters turning up to press conferences to needle him, and which he didn't handle very well, and so we're going to get all that sideshow as well. So look, I think they'll be better this year, but to your point, Brett, I don't think there's 3 contenders or even 4 in New Zealand. I think there's one, and I do expect that the Chiefs and the Hurricanes have got enough class, and I don't think the Crusaders are too far behind them. And the Highlanders on their day, fine, but I just don't see they have the depth to cover injuries.
Sorry, Harry, I've deviated off your question there. The Crusaders on that.
It's okay.
The Crusaders have got Hurricanes, Chiefs, the Abai, the Reds, and Force in the first five rounds. So.
So 3 tough ones to start with.
Definitely.
And apologies to Force fans.
as the Harry Index points out, the Blues are head and shoulders above everyone else. I actually think it is a Hunger Games between the 3 others Kiwi teams, because I think the Crusaders will be better, and I think the Chiefs and the Hurricanes might have taken a step back. So that's my prediction for the team. That those 3. I don't think the Crusaders are favored to be second, but they could ding someone. They could hurt someone's chances.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I can see that. It'll become a rough place to play again.
Yeah, the Chiefs is interesting because their squad really has not changed. And they've named Damien McKenzie at fullback this week. So they're evidently trying to skill young Jacob Jacom up.
Yeah, we're going to see how's that against Damien McKenzie today.
Well, that's an interesting thing as well. The Blues are going to play Plummer at 10, Barrett at the back, and that's interesting. It is a bit of a Hunger Games though about the Australian teams. I think that's like Queensland are clear favourites to me. There's not even any argument about that. And g'day to Martin Devlin, who absolutely fell off his chair when I said that on his show last week, which he then very quickly turned into a social media clip on me. I still maintain, I'll say it again, they should be aiming for a top 2 finish, and they absolutely should be. The question will be how far behind them the Brumbies are, and then how close to the Brumbies the Waratahs are to be second best. That's going to be the story. And then behind that, obviously, where the Force sit in this as well, because they've definitely strengthened, but they've had another turnover of players, and so it's going to take time for them to gel together. And we've certainly seen in their trial games, their back end depth probably isn't as good as the other Australian teams. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
If we're looking at cohesion markers, the Waratahs and the Force, clearly had a lot of new players come in, and that's helpful, especially in the Waratahs case. Some fantastic names in there, but it's very difficult in the short pre-season to get your defensive house, all of the patterns and the familiarity in defence together. So there'll be times when they're exposed in defence, and that's just a natural thing. And I think I wrote this week that whatever they do this year, the Waratahs will be a better side next year. But I agree with you 100%, Brett. The Aussie top dog is the house of the junkyard dog, and I'm expecting young Tim Ryan to really kick on this year. They're head and shoulders above the rest, and I agree they should be. Harry mentioned the Chiefs and the Hurricanes going back a little bit, and I agree with that. I think the Reds slot in nicely there to the second position. Having Josh Canham and Lukan
Salakaia-Loto and Matt Gibbon up front.
It's not just bringing 2 players in, but if we're talking cohesion again, it's bringing a combination in, and that really improves their side. Untold. So I'm expecting big things from the Reds this year.
They've filled in where they had a few holes last year, no doubt.
Yeah,
there is a world where I see the Waratahs actually fulfilling some of the hype. My worry for them is the second row. When I look across Brumbies and Reds, I see better locks. I see better depth. But when I look at the Waratahs and I don't look at the locks, that front row is plenty cohesive
Yeah.
at national level. The back row looks mean and malicious.
Yeah.
I love Charlie Gamble at this level. And then, as you know, I'm a great Tane Edmund Becker. Joseph Akuso Suali has shown that he can sort of jump in out of nowhere, cohesion or no, and do things that no one else can do.
Yes.
And I would think, especially at club level, that might show up, but who knows?
It'd be interesting to see how he plays at fullback, Geoff.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, they've got, clearly, I think Dan McKell has been leaning towards that. I like, I was a big fan of Suoli playing centre, which he did on the Northern Tour, clearly acquitted himself well. I don't think Joe Smith will be too concerned about that. I think the big thing at the moment is just to get some rugby into him and wherever he plays. And so if it's fullback, that's fine. They've got other options there, of course. Andrew Kellaway can clearly cover there. Harry mentioned Charlie Gamble at this level. A player who I really admire at Super Rugby level is Jake Gordon. He doesn't always get the credit that I think he deserves, but in terms of him at Super Rugby level, he's outstanding for the Waratahs. He's a real spark for them. Ed Med, clearly a player with a lot of promise. So, look, the Tars will have some nights where everything comes off and they'll delight their home crowd. If that brings people back to the stadium in Sydney, that's great for the game. But I do expect they'll have difficult nights as well where the defence is a bit off and things aren't quite ready. And whether that's enough for them to make the finals or not, I think they might come up a little bit shy.
They've got a tough opening month as well from memory. Highlanders by Drua, Force, Reds. And then I think it gets actually a bit worse after that, even when they start.
Yeah, look, everybody's got a tough match, and just on the Force, before we forget the Force, I think their issue is more around the scheduling. So they don't really get a sustained run at home. So they're doing this sort of hopping where it's 1 week at home and 1 week on the East Coast or a couple of weeks in New Zealand. And where that hurts them, it's not so much the away games, but on the week they travel back home, they're just like the visiting side. They're flying in, they get a compromised week, and they don't get that real benefit of home ground advantage. So, and I think people that support the Force will just be nodding their heads and saying, "Well, that's how it is for us. We always get shafted." And I've
got a Rugby Pass column coming out Wednesday morning in the UK, Wednesday sort of overnight in Australia. I spoke to Simon Cron last week about it, and he's really enthusiastic about the squad that they've been able to assemble. Knows that it's going to take a little bit of time for them to pull things together like it does, but is confident that the groundwork that they laid last year sets them up to be in a better place this year. It's certainly strengthened their squad. There's no question about that. But you're right. The challenge is going to be how the new players to Perth adapt and how they can cover injuries. He made the point that they lost 10 contracted forwards last year. They had to fill in and bring guys in season like 10 times last year. And already they have lost Harry Johnson-Holmes for the season. It was confirmed that he's done his ACL in the warm-up in that trial game here in Canberra late last week. And it was when it went down, and I straight away I'd noticed Harry Johnson-Holmes early because his face was lathered in sunscreen. It was a warm afternoon in Canberra last week. And suddenly, as they're wrapping up their warm up, suddenly there's a couple of trainers down to a player, and I quickly scanned the rest of the squad, and I said to a guy I was sitting with, who's actually worked with the Wallabies, I think it's Harry Johnson-Holmes, and we just sort of looked at where their where they were treating, well, this doesn't look real good. And sure enough, later on, he hobbled past on crutches with ice on his knee. So that was confirmed on Monday that he's going to miss basically another season. So yet again, the Force finding themselves having to fill in behind someone that they were banking on being there all year.
Yeah, and that's rotten luck for him, and he has had a lot of bad luck in recent years. And one thing it speaks to what you mentioned there about Simon Cron is, and this is one of the big things I learned being in with the Rebels last year, writing that book, is that the weeks come around really quickly, and most weeks come around too fast for the coaches and the team. So. They can plan all they like, but if they have a tough game on a Saturday night and then their next one's on a Friday night or next Saturday,
it's Tuesday before they know it.
Yeah, it involves travel. Then the trainings are compromised. The strength and conditioning guy, the physios start playing an increased role. Everyone's getting monitored to within an inch of their life. Who's available, who isn't. We can't really decide till Thursday, and so all the planning in the world counts for nothing. Once that clock starts ticking, it's incredible how fast it comes around each week.
Yeah.
And then really you're just hanging on, it's and it's quite fascinating.
What's the surprise result you see this weekend, Geoff?
Well, yeah, I haven't done the tips yet. I'll have a crack at that tomorrow. Look, I'm not sure there's any surprise results. So I think if we look at those tipping comps and you go to a game and it says 98% chance of Team A winning and 2% the other. I mean, that's just not. And so I think this year, until things sort themselves out, I think it's going to be pretty, a lot of sort of toss of the coin games. Maybe with the exception of the Blues games, particularly at home. But what's the Brumbies in Fiji? What's going to happen there now? It's not a surprise, right?
The Brumbies winning in Fiji might be surprised this weekend.
Yeah, it's almost a surprise if they win.
That's for me.
And the Highlanders coming to Sydney, brand new team, a lot of
done that before,
optimism, but who knows, right? So it is a bit of a raffle.
Could be interesting, Harry, if the Chiefs knock off the Blues in the rematch.
Yeah, I'd be a surprise. I think the way that the Blues play, the particular style they play, it's easier for them to start well because they don't rely on a lot of intricacies. They say, we're going to drive this bus right through you, and then let's see if you can stop it. I was thinking about, you just alluded to your book, Geoff, and I was thinking about the fact that some people say that having one child changes your family a lot more incrementally than if you have two. The second child, you're just adding on. And so my question to you is, why are you writing two books at once? Was it just easier because, you could just kind of use the same plot lines in both? Was there a murder mystery? Who killed the rebels?
Who's the Kevin Foote character in the novel?
No, they... believe it or not, they're quite different storylines. Look, the thing about the Rebels book we should remember is that when I went in there to start that, none of this end of the franchise was even contemplated, right? So
exactly,
this was going to be a book that opened the doors and the windows to a professional rugby franchise and showed people how it actually works. So where it came from is this idea that a lot of people have, a lot of fans have, that the success or failure of a side is all down to the head coach, and I wanted to show that there's a whole lot of people and a whole lot of factors that feed into things, and the head coach is sure the most important guy in the organization, but he's just one of many, and so I hope the book still gets that across, all of the relationships and the types of things that happen from week to week. But as we know, events sort of took over with respect to the financial side of it and Rugby Australia's motivation to go back to 4 teams. and then events played out, as we know, until the end of May, when it was made official that the Rebels were out. But really, knowing what we know now, that decision was made months earlier. And in fact, it goes back to 2017 when the Force were rejected. It's the same decision. And really, the only thing that changed was when COVID came, the Force got readmitted because, the competitions were separate.
Suddenly needed.
Yeah. So Rugby Australia needed a fifth side in to make a decent competition. So really, it's the same decision that happened then, and they just needed to engineer a way for that to happen, and that's what the pending court case is going to be about. Was that done fairly and in accordance with the governance and so on, and that's for other people to decide on, and all of that will play out this year. So the book did become something else. Why was I writing another book at the same time? Yeah, a little bit mad, I must admit. But
poor time management.
Yeah, but look, I had an idea for a crime fiction novel. I was keen to get it done. The lead times for these things are very long. I didn't want it just to be parked and sitting around. I really needed to push on. So, look, there were days when I'd been at the Rebels, I'd made notes, I'd done some interviews, I'd observed stuff, and then I'd come home after dinner, and then I'd just switch out of that and then start writing or editing the crime novel. And I didn't find it difficult at all to switch hats. But yeah, it was probably easier than what you'd imagine, really.
Quick yes or no. Quick yes or no. Did you start writing another chapter of the Rebels book in the crime novel draft at any point?
No, not at all. So no, I
just the utter professional he is.
Yeah, no, look, they're in separate files, and no. I do a lot of other stuff as well, and that's probably one thing. Jack of a lot of trades, maybe master of none. But you do. Some people find it easier to compartmentalize things and focus on something, and then switch out of that and focus on something else. That's something I enjoy. I don't want to be doing the same thing all the time. Harry, I'd suggest you're very similar in your personality. And, I don't think it's a hard thing for people like us just to switch in and out of different activities.
Yeah, and I've been around
Harry's
you enough
writing
to see
5
that
books
you.
at a time.
I've been around you enough to see that you play the piano. You have an interest in a wide variety of things in life. I found that reading the book, and which I've recommended, and everyone should read it. It's interesting in other parts, the role of an injured player and how the injured player stays a part of the team. People that are in marketing and how that fits into the world. To what extent there's a sense of place, and I felt like everyone should read it from that standpoint and not just fixate on the court case. But was there anything that was surprising to you being around a team like that? I mean, we've all been around teams, in teams, but what was something that stood out to you as an eye opener about the Rebels?
Good question, and a hard question, because I don't think I was ever surprised. We were surprised with all of the external stuff, and but again, this wasn't a book where I was setting out my opinion or anything like that. I was just observing and documenting it all, and it really is the story of the Rebels and the people involved with the franchise. And it's not until the very final piece of the book where I get to sort of do a little bit of a summing up and maybe state my own opinion. So really it was, just letting it all soak in and getting it down on the page. Was there something I was surprised about? I was probably surprised that I was expecting the Rebels to finish higher on the ladder. That's probably the biggest thing that surprised me for the year. But then when you think about it, soberly afterwards, given all of the pressure and the external stuff that was thrown at them. That's no surprise that they did creak and fracture a couple of times, and that's no surprise. But when they turned up at training again the next day, they were very good at putting the negative stuff and the losses behind them. You've had Kevin Foote on here before. He's he's quite a personality in terms of how he manages people, and it's not just the players. He's very big on managing the coaching group and making sure that everybody's aligned and bought into the culture and the goals. So they did regroup pretty quickly from recover from the downs. But even so, I felt more confident at the start of the year that they'd actually finish higher in the ladder. And I know they made the finals and that, but really I think everyone was disappointed at the final position. And probably the saddest thing out of all of this, forget about, well, it's hard to forget, but the negative impact this is having on rugby in Victoria. But probably the saddest thing is that they don't get the opportunity to build on what they were building and really come out this year and challenge for a top 4 spot.
Yeah.
And that's what really hurts everybody.
Yeah.
My surprise that I got from the book, Geoff, was the nature of the partnership between club and Rugby Australia, the definitions of it, and who are you if you say you're my partner, we're family, we're part of something. I found that to be distressing from a player standpoint, waiting for people coming into a meeting in the weight room or in the training area, and it just felt like it was a very bizarre relationship. And maybe that something is true of other countries, but it didn't seem like it. It felt like, to your point of basket case, Australia and Wales, it felt like you weren't trying to tell that story. It just was, you were just reporting, and it just
it was the story. It was.
Yeah.
What Geoff was
a lot of people will be surprised at that that aren't familiar with the background or that haven't read the book, and when they do, it is a bit jaw-dropping for them, and maybe they won't even learn some of this until all of the court business comes out and all the disclosure that's attached to that. I think there is a tale still to be told, for a lot of people that follow Australian rugby.
No doubt. What's been the feedback, Geoff, both from those involved in the Rebels and what sort of feedback has filtered back from Rugby Australia? Because I'm sure there has been.
Well, I've had a bit of indirect feedback. Look, I haven't had anybody call me and shout at me or anything like that. But I have heard secondhand that, I'm not sort of, number one ticket holder in there or anything like that. And look, I didn't set out to be negative about Rugby Australia. Harry said I told the story as it played out from the Rebels' point of view. So, and that's a side that probably didn't get a lot of press or anything like that. So, it's natural that there are some things in there that reflect poorly on Rugby Australia, and that's for people to judge. And maybe, again, some of that will come out in the court process. Look, I've had a lot of people contact me privately, and especially some Rebels Foundation members, been very emotional in what they've written to me or said to me. So the book it's for everybody, because I want people to get a sense of what any franchise is like. But it is natural that people that feel strongly about the Rebels, I must say I'm very happy that I've been able to tell that story for them, and it's only a little something, and maybe we'll see the Rebels back in some sort of form down the track. Nothing's forever, and we saw that with the Force, but certainly in the interim, it does feel like the end of the road in the immediate term.
Yeah, it certainly feels like that. Mate, you did a fantastic job of the book. It's been great to talk about. It's been great to talk to you again. And yeah, we're in for a really interesting season of rugby however we want to slice it this year.
Look, it's shaping as a great season. Obviously, it's a Lions year, and so there's heightened anticipation around that. We're going to get all the tourists out here. Rugby will be the big ticket in town for a month or so, or a bit longer.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. Personally, yeah, look, with all the Rebel stuff, I wasn't quite sure how I'd feel at the start of the season. And I've spoken to other fans of the Rebels and people involved with the club, and everybody seems to have a different reaction. And there will be people that disengage, but I must say, now we're in the week leading up to round one. I'm looking forward to it as much as anybody. So I'm very happy to be in that situation, and bring it on.
Yeah, no, we'll be good. Looking forward to it very much. Thanks so much for having a chat to us, mate. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and look forward to catching up again soon.
This is the 8-9 combo with Brett McKay and Harry Jones, and it was fantastic to have Geoff Parkes back on the pod. Harry sends his apologies from this point. As he mentioned at the start, he is literally in transit at Heathrow Airport and is literally boarding his plane as we speak. So I'm going to whip through our games of the week in just a moment without him. A reminder that in 2025, the guest program show has moved to midweek, as you will have noticed. And we're now kicking off the rugby week with weekend post-mortem, looking back at all the big games and the big results every weekend. It'll be at late Sunday, early Monday morning, depending on where you are in the rugby world. Our games of the week in Harry's absence, it starts with Super Rugby round 1, and we're really looking forward to this in our part of the world. There's some great looking games there. Certainly like the look of the Blues and Chiefs on Saturday afternoon in Auckland, a replay of last year's final. I actually think the games of the week this week is the Waratahs Highlanders game. It's going to be a really, really interesting game in Sydney on Friday night. So much anticipation around New South Wales this year under Dan McKellar and what they're able to achieve as part of their rebuild. And certainly the expectation is well and truly on them. It's round 11 of the ERC. And there is some really interesting games in that one as well. The Bulls and Sharks in Pretoria will be really interesting. That's 3rd against 4th. Harry's pick for this week is Munster v Scarlets in Limerick on Saturday. It's 7th against 6th. He will be there in Limerick to see this. He'll be in Ireland over the weekend, and he's very much looking forward to getting to Tormund Park to see Munster live in action. So that's going to be a really interesting game as well. It's round 16 of the top 14. And again, some really interesting games there. Bayonne Bordeaux on Saturday is 3rd against 4th. Harry's pick is Clermont Toulouse on Sunday. That's 5th against 1st. And, the last few Toulouse games have been really, really interesting as well. It is week 9 of Japan Rugby League 1. Kubota Spears and Kobelco Kobe Steelers on Saturday in Tokyo is 3rd against 6th. The Cannon Eagles Saitama Wild Knights on Sunday is 5th against 1st. But my pick here, funnily enough, is at the opposite end of the table. The Black Rams Ricoh against the Uresu D-Rocks in Tokyo on Saturday. It's 11th against 12th, but this game has got big implications for the relegation zone in League One. No question about that. There's one win each for those two teams there. And also starting this weekend is Major League Rugby in the States. 2 games stood out to us. San Diego, Seattle on Sunday, but Harry's pick here is the goddamn Houston Sabercats against Chicago Hounds in Houston on Saturday. Cats v Dogs was his note to me before he had to head for the departure gate. So really big interesting weekend of rugby around the rugby world. We can't wait to bring it back for you all and go through it all in the weekend post-mortem early next week. But that wraps up another huge episode of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast. And our sincere thanks to Geoff Parkes for tuning in and to Harry for hanging on in Heathrow for as long as he could. Don't forget, be sure to find and follow the 8-9 Combo on Twitter and on YouTube and now on Blue Sky as well to keep up with all of our movements. And you can leave us a rating or review wherever you can as well, and share us too as far and as wide as you possibly can as well. Harry and I are in socials in our usual places as well. But this is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed in a rugby podcast. Sean Maloney is locked and loaded in the closer. I'm Brett McKay. He was Harry Jones, and we will be back in your ears with the weekend postmortem next week. Come play with us. Never had to end a podcast on my own. Do I talk to myself here? Nah, I don't know.